The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NBA.
The Houston Rockets respond to the Golden State Warriors with a Game 2 win. Rockets getting the 15-point win, 109-94 against the Warriors here in Game 2, evening the series up 1 game apiece. And there's so much to unpack from this game. Jalen Green, bounce back of all bounce backs, playing like an absolute star. Welcome to the playoffs, Jalen Green. A 38-point evening for him. Alperen Sengun's two-way impact and how he was more of a facilitator in this game and how that really helped unlock more of the Houston Rockets offense. Of course, we'll talk about the Jimmy Butler injury and what that means for the rest of this series. So many different things to get into in this one, but we got to start with Jalen Green because that's the story of this game for the Rockets. Jalen Green from Game 1 to Game 2, a completely different player. Just a 180-degree turnaround for Jalen. Finished the night 38 points, 13 of 25 shooting, 8 of 18 from downtown, 4 of 5 at the charity stripe, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, couple turnovers. One of the turnovers doesn't count. It was officials called it it was a BS call. The gather step travel was totally ridiculous. So 1 turnover. They need to rescind that turnover. But just an unreal performance from Jalen Green. Night and day difference from Game 1 to Game 2. And you could tell the moment this game started, Jalen was locked in. And it wasn't just the scoring. It was everything that he was doing. It was the facilitating. It was the defense. Honestly, the defense might have been the most impressive part of this game for Jalen Green. Very early in the game, second or third possession of the game, Jalen Green canned a three-pointer and then came back down on the opposite end and immediately put clamps on Brandon Podziemski. Just had him in hell for 10 to 12 straight seconds to where all Brandon could do was just look for the pass to somebody else because he couldn't even initiate whatever set the Warriors wanted to run on that given possession. And then throughout the game, there were moments where Jalen Green was tasked with guarding Steph Curry and would get these little, he got poke checks on Steph. And then early in the game, he dove on the floor to chase after a loose ball that he got, forcing the turnover on Steph and then forcing a jump ball. And that happened multiple times over the course of the game. Jalen was so dialed in this game. And then the playmaking, the facilitating, he really got himself going early in this one by not focusing on scoring the ball, not trying to force the issue and trying to just make things happen just by himself offensively, 1 against 5. He involved his teammates. He understood that the Warriors' entire game plan was predicated on trying to disrupt him and take him out of things. And he was the decoy at times, right? They put so much attention towards stopping him. And he started making some of the reads that he was missing in Game 1. Early in the first quarter, he hit Amin Thompson for a couple back-to-back reads, just these beautiful little baseline cuts so that Amin could finish right at the rim. And then he had another great feed to Alperen Sengun, who got a deep seal on a mismatch. And Jalen had Draymond Green out on the perimeter, and he could have, tried to ISO up on Draymond Green or take him off the dribble or attack or something, but he realized that Sengun had the mismatch. He was patient with it, drew Draymond further out from the paint so that he couldn't double back and go trap Sengun once he got the ball, and then he got the pass down to Sengun exactly where he needed it, and Alpi was able to just go up for 2 right there at the rim. Just some great facilitating early in this game from Jalen, and that's what kind of helped unlock more of his offensive repertoire, because then the defense wasn't able to just key in on him, right? It helped open up some of the other driving lanes. It helped open up some opportunities for him that weren't there as much in Game 1. And then just the actual shot making was flat out next level. 13 of 25 is just absolutely ridiculous efficiency. He did it, and he did it a little bit through each quarter. It wasn't like he just showed up in one half. He didn't have any quarter where he disappeared. He scored a little bit in each frame, and then he really took off in that third quarter where he scored 15 of his 38 points. Did it in a variety of ways. Obviously, he hit the 8 triples, tying a Rockets franchise record with Chris Paul and Matt Maloney, of all people. 8 triples. So those are the 3 leaders for that Rockets franchise playoff record for most made threes in a playoff game. But this is exactly the type of game and performance that you need Jalen Green to have. This is exactly the type of player that the Rockets envisioned when they drafted him number 2 overall. And look, a ton of credit to Jalen Green for owning up to his game 1 struggles. After this game, after game 2, he spoke to the media and he kind of said, look, when I was out there in game 1, right, the lights were kind of bright. The court was real big, with the fans and everything. And he had kind of that, the nervousness, right, from his first ever playoff game. And it showed, right? 7 points, 20% shooting, but he shook that off. He looked at the film. He understood where he needed to improve, and he came out and played like an absolute star. This is the kind of performance that the Houston Rockets need from Jalen Green. And look, they're not going to get a 38 piece every single night from Jalen, but to see him make this massive turnaround from game 1 to game 2 inspires a ton of confidence. And again, to see him do it in so many different ways, it wasn't just the scoring, it was the facilitating, it was the defense, it was everything all encompassing in his performance in this game. He led the Rockets to this win. And at every point in this game where it felt like the Warriors might go on a little bit of a run, where they started to make a little bit of a push, cutting into the Rockets lead a little bit, and you started to get a little nervous. Oh, here it comes. Warriors are going to cut it to a single digit lead, or they're going to make a quick little push and make it a game again. Felt like Jalen had an answer, whether it was knocking down a 3, whether it was getting downhill, finishing at the rim, getting out in transition. He had a couple ridiculous transition dunks. Had the lob that he received from Amin Thompson for when I believe that made the score. I knew a Rockets score, whatever the bucket was, put the Rockets at 99. I don't know where the Warriors were at that point, but just an all around phenomenal performance from Jalen Green in this game. And hopefully it's a preview of more of what's to come as this series ultimately progresses. Before this game started, Ime Udoka kind of jokingly responded to a reporter who asked, what adjustment he was looking for from the Rockets. And he gave him a short and sweet answer. I forget what the question was specifically, but he was like, make shots. And as simple as it sounds, that's one of the things that the Rockets actually just did a lot better in this game. They just made shots. Shot 45% from the floor, 37.5% from 3. That was the big one, right? They only hit 6 threes, 20% from downtown in game 1. They were 15 of 40 in this game, 37.5%, significantly better from beyond the arc. Got much higher quality looks from downtown, and it helps when Jalen Green knocks down 8 triples himself. Had more than the entire rest of the team combined. So when your star player is on that kind of a heater, it certainly helps the percentages out quite a bit. But they were also significantly better at the free throw line too, 16 of 20 there as opposed to 11 of 20 in game 1. So across the board, the Rockets shooting was just significantly better, right? And you knew that those numbers would improve in game 2 because they were just so bad in game 1. And that's kind of the volatility of NBA basketball on a game-to-game basis. And that's why you play a 7-game series. Occasionally, you're going to have an off night, bad shooting night, whatever. But the Rockets certainly got back to form a little bit with their shot making here in this game. And the defense stayed consistent, right? They held the Warriors to 94 points. The defensive intensity was there. And yes, the Warriors are a significantly easier team to contain when you don't have to worry about having Jimmy Butler out there, which again, he only played the first 8 minutes before leaving the game due to injury. We'll talk about that and kind of what the impact that it's going to have on the rest of this series. Obviously that situation was really unfortunate. The discourse online around it is kind of ridiculous at this point where, people are saying, fans are saying Amin Thompson's a dirty player and this, no, like Amin Thompson was trying to crash the offensive glass and got kind of like plinkoed between Steven Adams and Draymond Green, trying to, get between the two of them, and just fell and tried to brace his fall. And it just so happened that the timing was right as Jimmy Butler was going up for a defensive rebound. And so he undercut Jimmy Butler accidentally, and then Butler just hit the ground really hard. So first and foremost, hope that Jimmy's okay. But we'll talk about his injury and kind of what that means potentially for the rest of the series in just a moment. But as far as the game flow is concerned, I mean, once Jimmy was out, it really hurt the Warriors, and it kind of limited what they could do offensively, and allowed the Rockets to key in even further defensively on Steph Curry. They limited him to just 20 points on 6 of 15 shooting and forced him into 6 turnovers. At that point, the Warriors really just didn't have any other options. They didn't have anybody else that could really fill that Jimmy Butler role offensively for them. And because the Rockets were able to dial up the intensity and really hone in on Steph Curry, it really put kind of a stranglehold on what the Warriors could ultimately do offensively. Rockets they stayed aggressive defensively. They do what they do on the defensive side of the ball. And, Warriors just didn't get anything from anywhere else. I mean, Quentin Post gave him 12 points. Jonathan Kuminga gave him 11. They got 12 from Moses Moody, but they just did not have enough scoring pop without Jimmy in the lineup. So we'll talk more about that in just a second. But elsewhere for the Rockets, and this was a big factor in this game, Alperen Şengün, who's I don't want his night to be overlooked, because Jalen's game was phenomenal, right? And Jalen Green is the headliner, the blockbuster of this Rockets game for sure. But Şengün was really, really effective in a different way compared to game one. First off, he finished a team high plus 28. The Rockets just flat out won the minutes where Alperen Şengün was on the floor. He finished with 17 points, 16 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals, had a few turnovers, 6 of 15 shooting. So an inefficient night from Alp compared to game one, where he was just feasting, 11 of 18 shooting overall in that game. But the main difference here is in game one, right? The Warriors were so willing to just let Alp work one-on-one and let him get his. And because of that, because Alp played one-on-one so much in that game, it kind of prevented other guys from really getting into a rhythm, right? Really establishing, the Rockets offense and getting everybody involved a little bit, making sure everybody got some touches, that kind of, that sometimes you, sometimes me, always us mantra. And because then as the game progressed and they didn't continue feeding Şengün and just letting him get up, 25, 30 shot attempts, other guys weren't in rhythm. They were rusty. They didn't have, a good lather going. They weren't in it. In this game, it very much felt like the Rockets made it a point to kind of spread the basketball around, get other guys involved, get other looks going. They didn't really go to the hunting Steph Curry as much as they did in game one, which I thought was a significant improvement.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
Jaylen Brown comes up huge with Jason Tatum out. Kristaps Porzingis bleeds again, but loves it. It's a tough series, and I didn't expect anything less. I expected this to be kind of a slugfest, but this has been incredibly difficult, physical. Porzingis bleeding, guys on the floor, the fouls everywhere. I'll talk about Porzingis. I'm going to save Porzingis for last. because it was relatively immaterial to the game, but it was still like the signature moment. But I want to save that for last. I'll talk about why the supporting cast are the difference in this series, even though the Celtics are playing at Orlando's pace for most of it. But got to start with Jaylen Brown, 36 points on 12 of 19 shooting, 5 of 7 from 3, 10 rebounds, 5 assists. He is the first Celtic ever. No other Celtic has put up 35 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists while shooting 63%. I know sometimes you got to adjust the sliders and you get certain numbers to go a certain way, and that's how you get to the only person who's ever done this a certain way. But bottom line is, no Celtic has shot this well, scored that many points, rebound, assist, and all that stuff. With JT out, no Jason Tatum, bone bruise in that right wrist. Not a surprise that he missed this game. He was here. He had a big wrap on his right hand, kind of like wrapped around the thumb. I don't know how bad it is. It was kind of a late decision to not play him, although he didn't warm up and didn't really see him milling around the locker room. It didn't seem like he was ever going to play, but they didn't announce it until very late. Regardless, Jaylen Brown comes up big with 36 points, 13 points in the third quarter, which was huge. The Celtics came out after a 3-point lead at halftime, just stormed out of the half, and Jaylen Brown was a big part of that. The Celtics had little pockets in this game of, hey, we're the Celtics. We're going to go out here. We're going to hit a bunch of threes. We're going to play some great defense. We're going to build this big lead. And then the Magic would just slowly chop away at it. And, very typical kind of fashion, right? The Celtics, high-powered offensive team, when they get going, especially when it feeds off of their defense, and that's what happened a lot in this. When the Celtics were going on their runs, it was feeding off of their defense, steals, rebounds, getting out, playing a little bit more up-tempo. They do that in little pockets here and there. They do it in little bursts. And Orlando has to work really, really hard. Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, you got to attack. A lot of mid-range stuff, a lot of getting to the basket, a lot of, not a lot from three necessarily. It's just bit by bit by bit. And they get close, and all of a sudden the Celtics go, bam, here's a 12-0 run or an 11-2 run or something like that. And it's like, oh. If you're from the Orlando side, you go, okay, we got it down to 5. This is great. Oh, now we're down 12 again. All right, here we go. Very Sisyphus trying to push the rock up the top of the hill, and then you get to the top, and there it goes all the way back down. You say, oh, all right, well, let's get back to the bottom of that rock. The Celtics are a very big, heavy rock, though, and led by Jaylen Brown. I'll get to the supporting cast in a minute, but led by Jaylen Brown on a night where there is no Jason Tatum, for him to drop this kind of performance, 12 of 19 shooting. It's incredible. When Jaylen's jumper is working the way it was in this game, and he came out right away and was pulling up. First basket of the game was a pick and roll where, and I thought the Celtics were going to do more of this, but pick and roll, Orlando switch, and one of the things that you do against a switch is right at the point of the pick and roll, you just rise up, because there's like a little gap, a little moment there where, as your guy, the guy who's been defending you, the guy who's getting picked, is kind of passing you off to the next guy, there's a little opening there to take that shot. And I thought the Celtics were going to take advantage of those a little bit more to try to get some early offense, to get some three-pointers up. But that was the first thing that Jaylen did. That went in, and that should have been an indication right away that Jaylen was going to have a big game. If his jumpers start to fall early, then the rest of his game kind of flows off of that, and that's when he tends to have his biggest nights. But, I'm most impressed, not even with the 36 points, not even with the 63% shooting, 10 rebounds for Jaylen. 10 rebounds for him. He's not a big rebounder. And my biggest fear with Jason out wasn't necessarily the offense. I thought the Celtics were going to be able to find the offense fine. They got a lot of weapons. Putting up 109 points without Jason Tatum, not really surprising. Rebounding the way they did, maybe a little bit more surprising. Jason's their best rebounder. He's their leading rebounder. But they got 3 guys with 10 rebounds apiece. Jaylen, Al Horford, Kristaps Porzingis, all with 10 rebounds. The first time in 5 years that the three Celtics have gotten together for 10 rebounds apiece in a playoff game, not since the bubble. The rebounding is a huge part of this because they held Orlando to 7 offensive rebounds and only 10 second chance points. They were 3 of 6 on second chance point attempts. So only 6 second chance point attempts for Orlando. That's a big reason why in a 9-point game where Orlando is a team that likes to get those second chances, because mostly they don't hit a lot of shots. They're not a great offense. You have to live on second chances if you're not a great offensive team. The Celtics limited those. There's a big reason why they're able to hold Orlando to 100 points. And really, if the Celtics didn't start fouling like crazy in the fourth quarter, I mean, really, it got a little out of hand in the fourth quarter. They gave up 29 points in the fourth. They actually lost that quarter. They did a pretty good job. 21 points allowed in the first, 26 in the second, 24 in the third. And then that 29th was fueled by free throws. But the second chance points allowed the Celtics to hold Orlando to 82 field goal attempts. Now, the field goal attempts, the margins where Joe Mazzulla likes to focus, a little thrown off. You don't want to just look at that column in the box score. The Celtics had 80, but they had 33 free throw attempts. But that doesn't change the fact that they were playing at Orlando's pace. And I would say out of the first 2 games, there's probably the third quarter, most of the third quarter in game 1. And like I said, little pockets in this game. So what, 35% of this series so far in 2 games have been played at Boston's pace. And the rest has been played at Orlando's pace, which sucks for Orlando because you played 2 games tough where the Boston Celtics were held to 103 and 109 points. For an offense like this to hold them to that's great for Orlando, except Orlando's offense couldn't break 90 in game 1 and just barely got to 100 thanks to free throws in game 2. They don't have the firepower to capitalize on what their defense is able to do. They also don't have the supporting cast to get the job done.
The NBA playoffs roll on, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll win $250 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. FanDuel makes it easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props, from 3-pointers to steals to assists. There's so many ways to bet on your game, your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. You can also check out some odds on the NFL draft. The over-under for running backs drafted in the first round, 2.5. Odds on the over, plus 110. The under, minus 152. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
Donovan Mitchell saves the day, and the Cavs take a 2-0 lead.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
The Cleveland Cavaliers won on Wednesday night, 121-112 over the Miami Heat to take a 2-0 lead in this best-of-7 series. And this was a game that probably should not have been as close as the final score. The Cavs led by as many as 19 points in this game. They had an outstanding second quarter where they scored 43 points. They hit 11 threes in that quarter alone. They were outstanding. They led by 19 in the second half, and they allowed Miami back into the game. But what the Cavs have that the Miami Heat don't have is a true superstar, and that true superstar is Donovan Mitchell. And Mitchell in this game scored 17 of his 30 points in the fourth quarter. He was absolutely fantastic down the stretch of this game because the Cavs offense in the fourth, I didn't think was great. I didn't think the process was great. They really struggled to generate, I think, the same caliber of look that they were getting earlier in the game. Give Miami some credit for that too. I thought Miami did a solid job outside of the second quarter of mixing up coverages against the Cavs. If you go back and watch that second quarter, they played a lot of zone. Duncan Robinson was on the floor, and the Cavs just absolutely torched that group. Like, they hit 4 threes in a row in 4 straight possessions, and they hit free throws on the 5th possession before that. So that's really where they took command of this game. But what Donovan did down the stretch is what superstars do, because the Cavs were in danger in this game. And I posted on social media right after the game that the Cavs escaped with a win. And I still feel like they did, because they did not play great aside from Donovan Mitchell down the stretch. That said, I do think that there are a lot of positives to take away from this, because when you have a superstar, the way that I think the Cavs have a superstar in Mitchell, I'm not going to sit here and say that he's the best player in the league or anything like that, because that's just not true. But I do think that he's going to, and we'll find this out in the coming weeks, be a guy named to first team All NBA. And for the most part, when he's been in Cleveland, when he's been healthy, he's been a top 10 player in basketball. And Miami doesn't have a guy like that on the roster. The Cavs do. And that's why they won this game. That's the luxury of having Donovan Mitchell, is on nights when things may start to sputter, and they did. Like, I thought that the ball movement in the second quarter was awesome. I thought the Cavs got off to a slow start on Wednesday. The first half of the first quarter wasn't very good. And then the second half of the first quarter all the way to halftime was outstanding offensively. The third quarter was fine. The fourth quarter wasn't great. Like, there was one point where they had only 8 points. Like, I don't know the exact timing, but it felt like halfway through the quarter, they only had 8 points in the fourth. And that's just not necessarily good enough. But again, having somebody like Donovan Mitchell can bail you out. And I thought that's exactly what he did. He had 4 threes in the fourth quarter. He was 7 of 10 from deep in this game. I thought that's a really good sign too, considering the fall off that we saw at the end of the regular season in his 3-point shooting percentage. So for him to have a 7 of 10 game from beyond the arc, and it just felt like everything that he was putting up was going in. And I thought the Cavs offensive process was better when he was on the floor late in this game. Part of that is because the Cavs have figured out who to attack. And I'm going to talk about that coming up in just a little bit, but I wanted to talk about Mitchell's game because I thought really it was tremendous. And that is, when the Cavs get that type of play from him, they're really hard to beat. And there are other nights, like we saw him have 30 points in game one. Thought he was really good there too. He had more help in the backcourt. I thought Darius Garland had a better game one than game two. He was only 2 of 8 from deep in game two. Ty Jerome was not nearly as effective in game two than he was game one. Cavs, of course, got better play on the wing. I thought DeAndre Hunter was pretty good. Max Strus was okay. But overall, like, they just got better play from that. And I thought Evan Mobley was better. I do want to talk about that coming up in a little bit too. But one of the other things that I think happened in the fourth quarter is that it's not just that the Cavs weren't making shots, because listen, we've all heard it's a make or miss league, right? Like, teams are obviously going to be more successful when they're making shots. And I don't think the second quarter, where the Cavs hit 11 3-pointers in that 12-minute period, was just good because they hit a bunch of shots. Like, the process was great. The ball movement was fantastic. They shared the basketball. Like, they looked like the Cavs at their peak that we saw earlier this year that maybe didn't exist for the last 7 weeks of the regular season, which again, doesn't matter. But the fourth quarter, even if the Cavs would have been hitting more shots, it felt like their offense got bogged down. Like, that ball movement wasn't the same. And again, give Miami a little bit of credit for that. But I think the worst part about that wasn't actually the offensive process. It was that it bled over the defense, that they were not able to string together stops, because it never felt like, I don't know that it ever felt like the Cavs were going to lose this game. But there was a point in the fourth quarter where I was sitting there just thinking, the Cavs really need to get a stop. And it feels like they're really struggling to do so. And Miami hit some tough shots. Certainly, Tyler Hero had a really good offensive game, and that matters. And again, Miami is, as we've heard from Kenny Atkinson, basically anybody that will talk about it, they will say that Miami's not a typical 10 seed. And I do think that there's something to that. Like, they finished 37-45, but their season was incredibly weird. And I do think that the Cavs thought that this was going to be a tougher test than Chicago or Atlanta would have been had one of those teams gotten this 8 seed. So that is something that is just worth thinking about, that they know Miami is going to push them. And they did that on Wednesday night. They did a good job, Miami did, in the fourth quarter, of not allowing the Cavs get to what they wanted offensively. And that really slowed the game down. I think the officiating slowed the game down a little bit too, when you look at some of the calls, and of course having a couple of challenges. Kenny Atkinson won 2 challenges on Wednesday night, and there's that clip of Atkinson. I think that was Pat Frayer, that he just signaled timeout to and gave the challenge signal and stared at him as he did it. Atkinson won both challenges. I thought both of them were really bad calls. The one out of bounds call that was called on Darius Garland that Atkinson challenged and was very quickly overturned. I don't know how that was called out of bounds on the floor. Like, that was not close. The other one was a Tyler Hero grift that he initially got a foul called, and then they realized, oh no, that's pretty grifty. So that got overturned too. But overall, the Cavs need to play better basketball, I think. But hey, any postseason win is a good win, because winning games in the playoffs, it's really, really difficult to do. And the Cavs found a way, and I do think that they'll be better because of this adversity, right? Like, it's not as if they're good enough to win 16 straight games, to win their next 14 games and hoist the Larry O'Brien trophy. There's going to be tough spots. It's not that they're not good enough to win the title. They are good enough to win the title. They're a true championship contender, and there's no debating that. But other teams are really good too, right? And other teams try really hard. It's not as if, and that's why part of the reason why I have come around to Miami being a really good test for them, because Miami, as we saw, is not going to lay down. We saw this in game 1. We saw it in game 2. The Heat are not going to go away. You are going to have to play 48 minutes of basketball to come out victorious. Now, if the Cavs do that, they should come out victorious, because they are a much more talented, well put together basketball team than the Miami Heat. The Cavs have better players. Like, I know this is not some shocking revelation, but the Cavs have better basketball players. It's as simple as that. They are a much better team, and that is why they're able to win these games. But Miami is going to make them earn that. And I do think that on Wednesday night, we saw the Heat make the Cavs earn that win. And credit to Donovan Mitchell, credit to the Cavs, credit to Evan Mobley, Darius Garland. Max Strus hit a couple of big free throws. They earned that win. It should not have been as close as it was. The offense needs to be better and maybe not need to be rescued by Donovan Mitchell in the fourth quarter. But playoff adversity can be a good thing for them, because there's going to be moments in the postseason that are tougher than this one. There's going to be moments in the postseason where maybe they're down 2-1 in a series. Maybe they're down, maybe they lose a game 1 at some point and have to fight back. Those moments are going to exist. And I don't know that this is just like the most adverse situation that they can draw upon. And I do know that this group has obviously been together. They played a 7-game series for the most part, the same group last year with Orlando. They played Boston in the second round last year. Like, they've done this before. It's not as if this is the first postseason series, but I do think having a refresher in terms of playoff adversity is not the worst thing in the world for this Cavs team. I thought they passed this test, and that's all that matters. It doesn't matter that they won this game by 9. It doesn't matter that this game was closer than it should have been. All that matters is that this game ended in a win. And now the Cavs have 14 more wins that they need to find a way to get if they want to be champions. But overall, Donovan Mitchell is a superstar. There's no debate there. He is a superstar. He did superstar stuff on Wednesday night. The Cavs are up 2-0 because of it.